There's nothing like learning about a knife, getting out whittling on a stick. I say that a lot in my videos, but I say that for a reason. I do it to learn how a knife handles, if the balance of a knife, how the geometry of the blade is going to slice or cut. I've always been an avid knife collector. I always bought knives, went to knife shows, every time I went into a town, if they had a knife store, I was in there. I had a collection, 2 gun safes full. I had about 600 knives in a collection. My parents loved to tell the story that when I was just walking good, I wanted Dad's Barlow pocket knife, and I cried until Mom finally relented and said, okay, he can have it, but you have to break the blades out of it. Of course, when Dad did that, I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I just like cutting things. I mean, a knife that's got a very sharp edge that just slices through wood, and to me, that just, I don't know, it gives me the fizz. I never could find a knife that just was perfect in a lot of ways, or many tasks that I do. Basically, what I was doing was making knives for myself. Never even crossed my mind to make and sell knives, but lo and behold, there's a lot of people out there that likes the same things I do. So, my name is William Collins. I'm the founder, creator, designer, fabricator, chief cook, bottle washer, marketing, CEO, CFO, whipping boy, complaint department, and the janitor for WC Knives. Moved around a lot. My dad was a timber cutter, so he kind of went with what was being cut at that time. I was born in Espanola, New Mexico, because my dad was out there working that summer, and that's just when I decided to show up. They came back within 2 weeks of my birth because Dad wanted to show me off. Lived in several small towns in East Texas, finally settled in a little town about 50 miles from here, and I went from 2nd grade into the 6th grade, and I started the 7th grade in Lufkin, Texas, and finally graduated in Lufkin, Texas. And then from there, I worked in construction for a couple of years, and then joined the Air Force and stayed there almost 10 years. I went back into construction as a superintendent for a company, stayed a superintendent there for 3 years, then went to work for another company in Austin as a project manager. I worked my way up from there to vice president of operations, did a lot of prisons, anywhere from $1 million to $100 million. Went from there to work for different companies in the Texas area, Houston, San Antonio, as senior project manager or division manager. Did that for about 14 years and decided I'd had enough. The main thing in life is find what you're happy doing and you will be successful at it. When I was in the construction industry, I made a lot of money. Big brick home, a lot of acreage. I had all the material things, the sports cars, I had all of that, but I wasn't happy. It was something that I dreaded going to. If you leave out happiness, you're going to crash. For 2 years, didn't do anything. Didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew that I was done with construction and that part of my life. So I just came back home. A knife has to fit your needs. It's not something you just look at and say, wow, that looks cool, or I like that design, or whatever. You need something that's going to fit whatever you're going to use that knife for. So using a knife is the only way that I know of to teach you what you need a knife for. So tri-stick is a good way of doing that. When I got out of construction, there was a knife that I wanted, and I contacted the maker, and he said, well, it'll be a 3-year wait. And I said, well, I'm not waiting 3 years. So I'll just make it myself. He kind of chuckles over the phone and says, okay, good luck. I kind of took that as a sign and like a bull to a red flag. So I got in the backyard with a stack of red oak firewood, a hair dryer, a bucket of used motor oil, a 1x30 Harbor Freight belt sander. I went to work. Watched a few videos on YouTube of how to anneal steel and how to heat treat, harden it, and temper it. And in about 2 weeks, I got a knife that was actually usable. Some family members saw it and some friends, and they said, well, you need to sell these. So I placed a few on eBay, and they would sell about as fast as I made them. Then the Bobby Moody bought one of the knives on eBay and did a video. My business doubled at that point for the following year. And every year since then, it's doubled in size. 2020 was my best year. That was just residuals from the previous year. We were turning out about 2,000 knives a year. So we was producing a lot of knives every week. Right at the start of 2020, everybody knows what happened. That year, everybody just walked out on me pretty much in the same week. I was down to myself, by myself, trying to fulfill a bunch of orders. And since that time, I've been just taking care of some retail. I cut the wholesales back to just 2 accounts, bringing out different models as fast as I can, or whenever I come up with one that I think is worthy of releasing, making knives 24/7 since this is the 13th year. So November will be 13 years. Getting the first knife compound grind that actually was functional and realizing, hey, I'm onto something here. This really works. That was another aha moment, They weren't very prevalent. It was very strange, if you will. And I think that's probably what I'm best known for, is that compound grind, and developed it into a tooth and different curves and other things that you don't typically see on a compound grind. Many people have asked me where I came up with a multi-grind at, and I really didn't. I didn't come up with this at all. All of us knife makers today are standing on the shoulders of those who've gone before. I think the best of my knowledge, Bob Lovelace is the first one that I know of who did a compound grind or a dual grind on a blade. And when we say dual grind, that does not mean that this cutting edge is 2 different angles. That's not what that means. A dual grind or a compound grind means that the apex is different. In some cases, it may be a Scandi at this part and a saber at another part. So that's 2 primary grinds, a Scandi and a saber married together. Or it could be a Scandi into a full flat, could be a convex into a full flat. It could be a combination of several different things. But a compound grind just means that there's 2 different grinds, or at least 2 different grinds. All of my grinds, the cutting edge is the same bevel all the way through, so it's very easily sharpened. It's if you lay it down and find that Scandi portion, it's the same angle all the way through. So if you can sharpen a Scandi, then you can sharpen one of my knives. As I said, I didn't come up with this idea or this compound grind. It's been passed around for at least since the 70s when Bob Lovelace did it first in Alaska. People didn't understand why I was doing that, and trying to relay why I was doing the compound grinds instead of doing the same drop points that Lovelace did, and the Bowie knives and the other popular, the Kephart, the Nesbitt, all those designs that they work, time tested, they've been proven. Why would you want to stray into something that is that different? And trying to relay the reasoning behind that was a hurdle that I had to get over, and it's taken time to do that. The reason I started exploring with compound grinds or dual grinds was because I've always owned knives all my life, but I'm always disappointed that the knife could not do or support more tasks than just a handful. I wanted something that would excel at many, many, many different tasks. And so as I used a knife, I realized that I don't use this portion of a knife the same as I use this portion or even the tip. So I never understood, or I started thinking, why do I have the same grind from here to the tip. Why not marry at least 2 grinds to that, so that I have 2 different grinds that would excel at more things than just 1 grind? So I started noticing the Mora, the Dave Beck's tracker, and so I started playing. I got out in the shop and I started playing, and this was my feeble attempt at a tracker. And the grind lines is atrocious. I mean, every person who starts something, the first 2 or 3 is horrible, but you got to start somewhere. So this is the one that I played around with, and the first one that I attempted. And then over time, as I played around the shop and went through buckets of steel and sweat and tears and frustration, I finally got to this model here, which started being known as the Woodsman's Grind, which is a Scandi into a saber. Had a kind of a drop point blade on it. As I used this in the woods, I realized that there was something to this. I was onto something. And I'm the only one that I know of that has this sweep. And the reason I put that sweep in there is because I love a kukri sweep. I think that's the best part of a kukri, is that sweep right there. Because it just leads that edge into whatever you're slicing and actually assists you in the slicing motion. So I put that in there for that reason. And then you have the thinner apex for slicing, game prep, hunting, that sort of thing. And this back here is your wood processing, your carving, your tent stakes, your feather sticks, and all this other stuff. So you have 2 different purposes here, or actually more, because I mean, you got wood here, or at least splitting power for firecraft for that V there. And you also have your slicing ability on this end for whatever you need as far as game prep, kitchen prep, hunting, whatever. I realized at this point that I was onto something, and the rest is history. You know, anything worthwhile takes time. And so I think that at this point, the majority of people understand why, and they're starting to get why. The more people that use them certainly understands why. Getting beyond that shock at first seeing one, and then getting them to really look at it and think about it and saying, okay, yeah, I see where he's going with this. My primary goal is versatility. When I'm developing a knife, whether it be a bushcraft knife, survival knife, I want that knife to do as many tasks and do them well. I mean, it may excel at a few of those, but it's not excel at everything, but do it well. Usually it just kind of starts in my head. There's models like the WCSK. Somebody had called one of my knives a survival knife. I said, no, that's not a survival knife. I said, I'll make a survival knife. That's where the WCSK came from. I said, if I was going to develop a survival knife, what would I want in that knife? A lot of times I'll use people that are very knowledgeable in that field that I'm trying to hit that niche for as a primary use for that knife. Although versatility is a huge part of my designs, I want that knife to be versatile and excel at many tasks rather than just one. For example, even a fillet knife is good at 2 tasks. I mean, it's good at filleting and boning and a few other things, even scanning it in certain circumstances. You know, I wanted a knife that was versatile, that was actually something that you would carry with you. You always see these survival knives that look like a sword. I mean, it's just not very practical to carry something like that. I wanted something that was practical yet versatile, that could cover tasks from anywhere from the urban environment to the wood setting. We just started playing with it, and I would come up with a design and hand it out to my field team. Dan Lutz, Blackie Thomas was just a huge part of that development. They would go out and they would play with it and say, okay, this works, this doesn't, and we would talk about it and say, well, what if I did this or that? And so we developed that WCSK from field trials in my strange part of my brain, basically. And so that's where that design came from. Others, you know, it's looking at a design and saying, what if? Maybe this needs a curved Scandi at this part and a full flat at this part. We want a different tip, and so on and so forth. It's a trial and error a lot of times. And many times what comes out of this brain is never seen by the public because it's so weird. It doesn't work as I envisioned. Those a lot of times are changed or thrown in the trash or done something with. They never see the light of day. But it's hard to say. I don't know where. One of them woke me up in the middle of the night. I don't know where it came from. Maybe it's divine. I don't know. I had one guy contact me and said, I want to come learn how to build a knife. He said, I've got 2 weeks. And I said, well, it's taken me 8 years to figure it out, and I still ain't got it figured out. So you might want to schedule more time. It's not something you're going to learn overnight. You got to get in there and put in the tears and the blood and the sweat and learn how to grind. To get the cheapest and the best 2x72 grinder that they can afford, get some cheap steel from Lowe's and start grinding. Learn what you need to do, how your hands perform, looking at different areas of the blade. Learn to grind before you do anything. Then after you learn how to grind something, then you can go into the heat treat, whether you're going to outsource it, you're going to do it in-house, whatever you're going to do. Develop your own style. Dare to be different. Don't be different just to be different, but be different because of your philosophy, your needs, your talent. Then after you learn how to build a knife, then you got the business aspect of it, which is totally different. If you're going to do this for a living, after you build a knife, you got to sell it. Once you sell it, you got to make sure that you got enough money to build the next one. There's a lot to having a knife shop and building knives and all this other stuff that a lot of people don't think about. And I learn something every day still. We'll probably die behind the grinder. As far as the process of developing and designing new knives, that's what gets me up in the mornings. And why build something if you're not going to grow it? At what size? I don't know. You build it, and if people enjoy it and want it, then you sell it, and you build as many as they sell, and keep growing if it's going to grow. If not, then I'm going to keep making knives. I'll make them just for me, but I'll be making knives.